Okay, both pieces, the tails have been cut and cleaned up, and we are ready to go ahead and mark for our pins. So again, bear with me while I clean up a little bit. Okay, so these are our long sides, these are our short sides. So now we have to cut pins in this side of the board that will interlock, match up with this side. So the way I do that is, and I just put my bench dog down, I use a little trick, and I'm not sure who I picked this up from. It might have been Rob Kosman. I know I watched a lot of him when I was getting started. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to make a little cut, little relief here, just like we were going to chisel these pins off. And notice this is on the back side of the tails. So make this little relief cut. I'm starting about 1/16 of an inch out and then going into the knife line. Now I'm going to start a little further back this time. I'm going to start about 1/8 of an inch back and do the same thing. Now yes, this is time consuming, but if you want good looking hand cut dovetails, that's kind of part of the deal. You got to invest some time. Okay. Now, hopefully you don't have any fibers like that. If you do, just give it a little rock, cut them off. Okay, now I'm going to keep walking that out about 1/16 of an inch at a time and cutting back, just shaving a little bit off each time, right into the knife line. You don't need to take off a whole lot. Now what I'm doing is I'm trying to make a relief cut that will allow me to slide this tailboard right up. Now I don't know if you heard that, but that's a positive stop. That is locked perfectly onto the shoulder of the tailboard. Now if I can do that, that's going to go a long way in helping me keep this aligned, as opposed to just trying to hold it and having the damn thing slip around. This stuff is pretty slippery. So keep going. I could actually stop there, but I'm going to keep trimming off a little more. You can, and I actually do have that plane now. You can rabbet this. You can get a rabbet plane and go right across the grain. I've just never used it for that in this application. And so I just want to show you guys, because I know not everybody has a rabbeting block plane. So I'm going to show you how I do it without it. Now that is probably pretty good. Okay, so now the next part is deciding which piece you want to join where. It really doesn't matter in a box like this. All the sides are sort of the same. Although if you were looking to do any sort of kind of grain matching, now would be the time to do it. And as a matter of fact, this piece has a little bit of quarter sawn figure here, and this has quarter sawn figure, so I think I'm going to put those pieces together. So I'm going to take a pencil, see if I can use red, and write, let's see that, number 1. And now, since everywhere there's a tail, there's not going to be wood, I'm going to come down here and write 1 on this piece. It's important to keep these aligned, because although we cut these back to back, there's little differences, and it'll make a difference. So since we're taking this particular set of tails, scribing it to this particular end of this board, if we would try to change that up, it might go together, but a lot of times I find that it doesn't go together quite as well as if you use the exact piece you scribed to. So these are essentially the same, but even a tiny little minute difference in the size or thickness or shape of the tail can cause problems if you try to put it into a pin board that was not designed to go for it. So here we go. I'm going to throw the pin board in a vise. I'm going to take my number 1 side tail board, and that's perfect. That's actually holding really well. Now, you can see this. Here's another trick. So what I'm trying to do is squeeze a 1/2 inch board, and it's racking. So a quick way to fix that is to squeeze a 1/2 inch board on the other side. Or get a moxxon vise, and I have a moxxon vise. I might pull the moxxon vise out when I do the pin cutting. There you go. So now it's not racking because I have the same thickness on each side. That's nice and sturdy. So now what I want to do, I want to find something that I can set this pin board on that's going to level it up. A lot of guys will use their plane, and I guess I could do that. As a matter of fact, yeah, that's going to be a little too big though. So let me use a block plane. That's a little too tall. How about my low angle block plane? That's a little too tall. What about if I slide it forward? Still not. So I need something about that high. Let's do, real-time woodworking videos. To see me putz around with various objects in my shop trying to find the right height. Ooh, I think I got it. That's it. Okay. Now, I'm going to slide this up. I'm going to make sure, as you can see, I've got my inlay on that side. I've got my inlay on that side, so I've got the pieces face the right direction. I'm going to slide it up. Okay, so the reason we cut that rabbet, or took that stock off the back, is so that this piece slides right up to the edge of the other piece. And it's a lot harder for this thing to shift now if I'm going to put my hand down on it, which I plan to. The other point now that we've got to be careful is aligning these two edges. Now what I usually do is get a square, put it on the edge of this piece, and just slide this one down until I hit it, which is right there. And that is the position we want to be in. Now I'm going to get my marking knife and go ahead and mark these out here. Okay. There it is. So now, as you know, I like to color in my knife lines with a mechanical pencil. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight these real quick. Okay. Now that that's done, we have to connect these lines straight down to our shoulder our shoulder line. I'm going to do that with the square. You guys have seen this before. I use this a lot. Put the knife in the knife line, and that is basically the exit mark I made when marking the top. So you're going to find it. The knife should fall right into it. Slide your square over and just connect that line down. Slide it over, same thing. And then for this one, since it's all the way on the edge, I'm going to flip the square around and do it a little differently. Find the knife line, slide it over, hit it, and come the other direction. Alright, that's one side. We'll color them in so we can see them. Okay, now the most important part in cutting dovetails after this portion is to mark your waist. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to cut out the wrong sections because it's kind of confusing if you're looking at it and you don't know what side you're cutting. And you'll see here shortly we're going to have to cut on one side of the line. Now a lot of guys just do pencil and they cut on one side of the line, clean it up with a chisel. I like a knife mark. A knife mark gives my saw, my Japanese saw, a curve to ride in, and generally for me that ends up giving me a straighter cut. So I'm going to mark the waist on the top as well because that's what we're going to be looking at. You want to leave as little room for error as possible. Alright, now we just got to connect the lines on the back side, and we will be ready to cut some pins. If you're wondering about this marking knife, I actually made this marking knife. It is made with a piece of an old bandsaw blade that snapped. I think it's a Timberwolf blade, so it's Swedish silicone steel. I made a little purple heart handle. I think it's a 1/4 inch, and just routed a 1/4 inch groove inside the each half. Epoxied it shut, drilled some holes through it, ran some dowels through it to really tighten it up, and it served me well for quite a few years. It's pretty easy to sharpen and it holds its edge. And you can see that slipped a little bit, and that happens a lot with white oak because it's got these strands in it. And the knife tends to want to follow the strands of the grain rather than the where you want it to go. Alright, so there we go. Fill these in quick. Mark the waist. And we're ready to go. Okay. because we made our knife line, let's see, here it was. Because we made our knife line just on the inside of our tails, the edge of our pin actually needs to be on the inside, on the X, where the X's are. The saw needs to be on the inside of that line. And that's because if we just put our saw right in the knife line and let it go straight down the middle of it, it'll probably go together real easy, but you're going to have, chances are you're going to have some gaps that way. So what I'm going to do is try to get my knife to go to the right of the knife line on here, to the left of the knife line over here. And then we can kind of tweak the fit a little bit using chisels and whatnot to get a real nice tight fit. So here goes nothing. I always like to use my thumbnail to kind of position the blade where I want it to cut. Now, if you can hear that, what's going on is this is such a flimsy piece, it's vibrating too much. So in these cases, what I will do is back it up with another board and raise this board up so that I don't cut into the board that I don't want to cut. Let's see what that does. It's better. So there's a pin board cut to the tail size. And as you can see, I left a little bit of that line on either side so you can see the pencil mark. And again, that's going to allow me to fine tune the fit so that we don't have any gaps. You could, like I said, just have gone right down that pencil line and hope for the best, and sometimes I've actually had success like that. Other times it's left gaps. To be quite honest, leaving the line and the knife line and the pencil line and having to fine tune it does create a lot of extra work, but if that extra work means better looking dovetails, then why not? So I'm going to keep trucking away here and turn you guys back on when I'm done. See you then. Alright, so I cut out the waist on the pin board and fine-tuned the fit a little bit. Sometimes I like to use a file just to smooth the edges. If I'm trying to put the two pieces together and I end up with it's a little tighter, sometimes you pull it off, you can see shiny spots on the tails, and that indicates where there's some rubbing. It's too tight. So I'll go in there with a file and just making sure that I keep the file on the same plane as whatever piece I'm filing. Just give it a couple strokes, take a little bit off, keep going back, fitting it. I just maybe spent 2 minutes on this one, and I've got this thing pretty well ready to go. I don't want to hammer it down all the way, so it's sitting up a little bit because I want to be able to get it off. I still have to do the other three the other three pin ends. So just wanted to show you guys what it looks like when you take your time and lay out everything. Looks like that. So I'm going to keep rolling here, and I'll turn you guys back on when we've pretty much got a box. See you then. Okay. So now what I've done, I've marked the other. So this is number 1. I flipped it over, marked this as number 2, and made sure that because number 1 matches up with number 1 pin board, number 1 tail board, number 1 pin board go together, that I am not, and I've done this before now, I've marked this side too and then tried to cut the pins on here, which obviously that's not going to work because it just wouldn't work that way. So be sure that your numbers sequence is in the right order and that it makes sense and that you can actually put 1 to 1 and 2 to 2. So I grabbed the other side, I marked it as 2. I was careful to put the marks on a portion of the wood that is not going to be cut off or sawn off in this case. And now I am just playing with the height. I went ahead and did my little rabbit trick, just put a little ledge here on the shoulder and the back of the tails to help it register better. And I had it perfect. That's good enough right there. Alright, and bring my square up, make sure the sides are square and flush, and there we go. I'm ready to mark my second pin board. She slipped on me. You see that? So it's alright. Put it right back into the same position. Press down a little harder. I can see my knife line is right where it's supposed to be, and I'm going to keep going. And that's it. Pencil here. Typically for woodworking, I like these Blackwing Naturals. You can get these online. I think I got them on Amazon if I remember correctly, and it's they're nice. It's like a Japanese graphite. It's 2 or 3 times harder than regular pencils, so it makes nice dark lines in wood. You don't have to press down. I like them, and it's got the cool eraser that you can keep bringing it, extending it up. So if you see me using those, these are Blackwing Naturals. Highly recommend these. Alright, at this point we just need to extend our pin lines down the board. I'm going to keep it in the vise to do it this time. It can be a little easier that way. And you guys have already seen me do this, so you don't really need to see exactly what I'm doing. And if you notice this thing slipping, this is not an ideal setup for dovetails. I've got it pinched on the left side of what honestly is a crappy vise. It's got a central screw. It's just really not designed for this type of work. And the funny thing is, I spent a couple days, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, making a moxxon vise, and I have it, and it's right over there. And all I would have to do is just move one thing, and I could easily get to it and set it up. But I just don't go for it because, I don't know, maybe I'm lazy. I don't know if that's it. I mean, truth be told, I usually have to set it up on my router table because it's raised up high enough, and I would have to move a couple more things, and so maybe that's what it is. But I think I'm going to set it up and see if it makes a difference in my cutting performance. And then on the other 2 pin boards, I'm going to try the blue tape method, popularized by Mike, I'm drawing a blank now. He's part of Fine Woodworking. But what he does is puts blue tape on the end grain of the pin board, and then rather than having to mark with a knife and cut real deep down in it, you basically just make cuts in the blue tape and then peel away the areas that are to be your waste, and so you're left with wood appearing through blue tape everywhere where you need to cut. I've never tried it before. I've always wanted to. Mike swears by it. At least he says he does in his Shop Talk podcasts. So we'll try that next time, see if it's any faster, see if it's any better. I'm usually hesitant to try new processes halfway through a project, but I got the camera rolling, so if I mess up, it's okay. You'll get to see me mess up, and you'll learn why I messed up, and maybe, hopefully, that would keep you from messing up. Alright, so I got my waist marked, I got the pins, pin locations cut in. Forgot to mark the lines here. Alright, time to cut them. Okay. You guys stay right there, alright? I'm going to grab my saw. Oh, my saw's already over here. Alright. Here we go. Forgot my little trick to back up this piece to make it a little less rattly. Let's go ahead and try that here. Again, another reason why I should be using my moxxon vise. tilting the saw down, what I'm doing there is I am basically, I am sawing down the front of this line right here. I'm going to saw down that. I'm going to saw a little bit into the corner and then down. It's easier for me to get that alignment than it is to just go from the top through the end grain and hope that I'm aligned and level and plumb and 90 degrees, and I've got this angle and I'm hitting the back mark and the front mark. So sometimes I will cut down and basically create a cut. So if you can imagine the saw in the cut like this all the way down to that line, what that does is it creates a track for your saw to ride, and then when you go to put it back up again and go through the whole piece, there's a lot of stock missing on this side, and your saw will naturally want to follow that path because, as I said before, saws are like water. They follow the path of least resistance, typically. So that's why I'm doing that. So I'll illustrate that again. Okay, you can see my saw. I am almost down to the line on this side, and I am still in the line on the top. Now I am going to level the saw out slowly and let the saw do the work. And that, oh, hello. That is the result. Right down the knife line, right across the knife line, and I made sure I got that knife line perfect. So there it is. I'm going to get the waste out of there, do a little more chisel work, fit the tails into those pins, and then the next time I turn the camera on, I should have the moxxon vise set up, and that is that beast right there. So I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so a little spin on the blue tape trick. I went with a white tape trick because the only blue tape that I have accessible to me is 2 inches wide. So I would think the white tape would work just as well. So I went with that. So I basically put it on the end grain. Made sure it was adhered really well, trimmed off the excess, and now I am going to go ahead and try this. This is the first time I've ever tried this method, so I'm not really sure what to expect. I'm a little worried that without a real knife line that my saw might get a little wonky, but we will see here. I'll tell you what, one thing I noticed right off the bat is that the tape helps, almost acts as like almost like a grip tape for this piece, so I'm not having to struggle to hold that still like I normally would. So I like that, and I am actually able to cut a pretty deep knife line like I would any other time. So I got to be honest with you, I think I'm going to start using this trick all the time. Okay, that's that. And now you would simply peel away the waste. like that. I like it. I don't know if it's going to make a whole lot of difference. I guess if you guys, for those of you who are maybe a little older, maybe don't have the best eyesight, that can definitely, I can see that could be helpful. Depending on the end grain, especially in darker woods, maybe like a walnut where you're not able to see a gray pencil line, I'm sure that that could be very helpful. For me, I will continue to use it probably because, like I said, it really helped the tailboard grip, and it wasn't sliding around on what is usually pretty slick end grain. So that's that. I'm going to pause you guys for a minute, get the moxxon vise out, and do what I told you I was going to do earlier. Okay, this is the moxxon vise. I finally pulled it out, got it set up. Moxxon vise is simply a twin screw vise that makes cutting dovetails on wider pieces, really on any piece, but the nice thing about this, I think I have 20.5 inches on center, so I can actually fit a 20.5 inch wide panel in this vise, holding it firmly and with no racking because it is twin screw. I believe I got the hardware kit on Amazon. I think it's Tay Tools. It was like 30 or 40 bucks. I lined the jaws with something called crubber. I believe it's an automotive gasket material. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I think it was like 15 bucks. And the wood is a piece of ambrosia maple that I got from a skid, a big skid. So I think all in like 50 bucks. You can buy these things from people put together, and they can be pretty expensive, hundreds of dollars. So I'm happy with this. It serves its purpose. It's a lot better for this than that, which is my main bench vise. Some of you might have a twin screw, just a regular twin screw bench vise, and that serves the same purpose. I don't have one, so I use this when I feel like getting it out. So go ahead and position my workpiece. Position it in the center. I want the right height. Looks about good. Make sure it's square. It is. Take them half a turn, and that is nice and solid. All right. Here we go. Gotta say, that's a lot nicer. That is a lot nicer, a lot less vibration and shimmying and all that sorts of stuff. So I like that. I think I'm gonna use this more often. The only issue I'm seeing now is that my lighting is not great. But that's why I have that. Well, and the saw behaves a lot better when the piece isn't vibrating back and forth. So I just learned something there. Nice. Okay. I am definitely happy with the moxxon vise. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I probably got $50 into it. And for $50, it's a pretty good deal. You could buy them pre-made, and they can be hundreds of dollars. So that choice is up to you. Since I haven't done this in a little while, I'm going to go ahead and video myself chopping out the waste on the pin board. And again, I'm going to forego the fret saw because I've discovered that really is a slower way of doing it, and it creates more work. So I'm going to do it like this. Now, if you're wondering why I don't use the 1-inch chisel for chopping, that is because this is a very hard wood. It's white oak, and I find that trying to chop across white oak fibers with a 1-inch chisel, it just takes a hell of a whack. I mean, I'm already whacking it pretty hard with this with this 1/2-inch chisel. And as you can see, I talked about this earlier, that is a result of whacking it too hard, because what happened, I did not have enough clearance for my chisel, and when I struck the chisel, it kind of wedged itself back past my shoulder line. That's not too bad. I think once it gets put together and I get it sanded down, you probably won't ever see it, but that is something to be cautious of. at this stage, I want to focus on, as I said before, kind of back cutting inside the sockets here, and that will decrease the chances